Your neighbor just cut their price. Again, and the neighbor across the street? Their house has been sitting there so long, the for sale sign is getting a tan. California's median home price is screaming toward $950,000 in 2026. But behind that shiny headline, 10 cities are quietly bleeding out. And if you own property in any of them, you need to hear this. Right now, let's start with Fresno. And let me be honest with you right up front. Fresno is the kind of city that never asked for trouble. It just found it anyway. Fifth largest city in all of California. More than 500,000 people calling it home. For years, decades even, Fresno was the go-to answer for anybody who got priced off the California coast. You couldn't afford San Francisco? Fine. You couldn't afford Los Angeles? No problem. You headed inland. You headed to Fresno. You bought yourself a house, a yard, maybe a barbecue grill, and you told yourself you made the smart move. And for a while, you did. But right now, in 2026, the smart money is getting nervous. And here's why. Over 20% of all homes currently listed for sale in Fresno have had their prices cut. 1 in 5 sellers. Think about that. These aren't desperate people who bought yesterday. These are homeowners who listed with confidence, priced based on what their neighbor got 2 years ago, and are now sitting there watching their phone not ring. So they do the only thing they can do. They drop the price, and they wait, and they drop it again. Home value growth in Fresno has slowed to just 2.4% year over year. Now I know what you're thinking. 2.4%, that's still growth, right? That's still going up. But here's the number they don't put in the headline. Inflation is running at 3%. That means in real, actual, grocery store dollars, Fresno homes are losing value. The number on the sign goes up. The purchasing power goes down. That's not a win. That's a magic trick with your retirement money. And it gets more specific than that. The overvaluation rate in Fresno sits at nearly 12%. That means homes in Fresno right now are priced approximately 12% higher than what the local economy can actually support. The median household income in Fresno is around $64,000 a year. The median home price is pushing $380,000. You do that math at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a calculator, and you will feel in your stomach. A family earning $64,000 a year, trying to buy a $380,000 home with a mortgage rate above 6%, their monthly payment comes out to somewhere around $2,200 to $2,400 a month before insurance, before property tax, before the water bill. That's more than 40% of their gross monthly income going to one house. The financial rule of thumb has always been 28 to 30%. Fresno is blowing past that like it doesn't exist. Now here's the part that doesn't make the news, but every local knows it. The Central Valley summers are not a joke. We're talking 100+ degrees from June through September. And the air quality? Fresno regularly ranks among the worst cities in the entire nation for air pollution. The San Joaquin Valley sits in a geographic bowl that traps agricultural dust, car exhaust, and wildfire smoke like a soup pot with a lid on. For a younger buyer, that's a nuisance. For someone in their 50s, 60s, or 70s with any kind of respiratory issue, asthma, COPD, heart conditions, that's a deal breaker. And the job market? Outside of agriculture, healthcare, and government, it is thin. People moved to Fresno during the pandemic because it was affordable and remote work made location irrelevant. Remote work changed. Companies called people back. And some of those pandemic transplants packed up quietly and headed somewhere else, either back to the coast or out of California entirely. The sellers who bought at peak 2021 and 2022 prices are the ones feeling it the hardest right now. They paid top dollar. They expected the momentum to continue. It didn't. And they're now competing for a shrinking pool of buyers in a market where every week that passes costs them more negotiating power. Fresno is not collapsing. Let me be clear about that. It is not falling off a cliff. But the era of listing your house on a Tuesday and getting 3 offers by the weekend, that era is finished in Fresno. This is a buyer's market now. And if you're the seller, that is cold comfort on a hot valley afternoon. Now if Fresno made you sit up a little straighter in your chair, Bakersfield is about to make you put down your coffee cup entirely. Same Central Valley, same inland California story, but with a problem layered on top that Fresno doesn't have. And that extra problem has a name. It's called oil, but we'll get to that in a second. First, the numbers. 22.5% of all homes listed for sale in Bakersfield have had their prices reduced. That is nearly 1 in every 4 sellers walking back their original asking price. They listed high, the buyers didn't come, and now they're cutting. Some of them are cutting more than once. The overvaluation rate in Bakersfield, 19.4%, nearly 20% above what the local market can fundamentally support. For context, Fresno's overvaluation was 12%, and we just called that alarming. Bakersfield is blowing right past it. In a city where the median household income is around $63,000 a year, homes are priced at a level that requires a financial stretch most residents simply cannot make, especially not with today's interest rates. During the pandemic, Bakersfield was a gold rush. Los Angeles residents, exhausted, priced out, fed up with traffic and rent, looked at a map, drove 2 hours north on the 99, and discovered they could buy a 4-bedroom home for what they were paying in annual rent back in LA. So they bought, and they bought fast, and investors followed right behind them, and developers started building. And prices jumped nearly 40% between 2019 and 2022. But now the rush is over. The LA transplants who drove the demand, they're not coming in the same numbers anymore. Some went back. Some found other markets. And the inventory that was built to serve that flood of buyers is sitting there, waiting while the calendar pages turn. Now here is the extra layer I mentioned. The one that makes Bakersfield different from everywhere else on this list. Oil. Kern County, the county Bakersfield sits in, produces more oil than any other county in California. The petroleum industry has been the backbone of this economy for well over 100 years. Generations of families built their lives, bought their homes, and sent their kids to college on oil industry wages. But California's state government has been on a mission to phase out fossil fuels. New regulations come out of Sacramento nearly every legislative session targeting oil extraction, refining, and related industries. Workers in the Kern County oil sector are watching their long-term job security erode in real time. Some companies are already scaling back operations. Some workers are already making contingency plans, which means some of them are not buying homes at Bakersfield. And some who own homes are quietly thinking about what happens if the industry continues to contract. When you mix slowing outside demand and nearly 20% overvaluation rate, rising inventory, price cuts on 1 in 4 listings, and an economy anchored to an industry that the state legislature is actively trying to wind down, you have a market that is not just cooling. It is correcting with momentum behind it. If you bought in Bakersfield in 2021 or 2022 at peak prices, your equity cushion is thinner than you realize. And every month that prices drift lower, that cushion gets a little thinner still. Bakersfield is not gone, but it is sliding. And the slide isn't finished yet. All right, grab the armrest. Because Modesto is going to take what we just talked about in Fresno and Bakersfield and add something that no real estate brochure will ever mention. Car thieves. We'll get there. But first, the market picture. Modesto sits about 90 minutes east of San Francisco. For years, that 90-minute distance was its superpower. Bay Area workers who couldn't stomach a $1.2 million mortgage for a 2-bedroom bungalow in the East Bay discovered that they could drive 90 minutes east and buy a 3-bedroom house with a backyard for $320,000. For commuters, that math was painful but doable. Wake up early, drive west, drive east, go home, repeat. And then the pandemic hit and everybody started working from home. Suddenly, the 90-minute commute didn't matter because there was no commute. Modesto exploded. Prices ran up fast. People bought in a frenzy. The market was hot. It was moving. It felt like it would just keep going. And then the companies started calling people back to the office. That 90-minute drive that used to be manageable 5 days a week, it became a nightmare. People did the math again, and the math came out different this time. Some moved back closer to the Bay. Some left California completely. Either way, the demand that held Modesto's housing market up during the pandemic years quietly walked out the door. Right now, Modesto is among the top 3 cities in all of California for listing price reductions. Sellers are cutting $5,000, $10,000, sometimes $15,000 or more off their asking prices, try to shake loose one willing buyer. Homes are sitting. Days on market are stretching. Inventory is rising. The sellers who bought at 2021 and 2022 peak prices are watching their neighbors drop prices and feeling a cold wind on the back of their neck. Home values have grown modestly on paper, but when you adjust for inflation and compare to the actual peak, many Modesto homeowners are either at the break-even point or slightly underwater. That is not what they signed up for when they bought. Now, the car theft problem. Modesto has made national news multiple years running for having one of the highest vehicle theft rates in the United States. Not in California, in the entire country. It is not even close. The numbers are extraordinary and not in a good way. Property crime rates are well above the California state average, which itself is not a low bar. And here is what those statistics do to a housing market that a lot of people don't talk about. They affect confidence. They affect how a buyer feels when they're standing in a driveway looking at a house and asking themselves, do I want to raise my family here? Do I want to retire here? Do I want to park my car here every single night? For a younger buyer, it's a hesitation. For a senior buyer who has worked their whole life for the home they want to settle into, it's a deal breaker. Nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to put $300,000 or $350,000 into a home in a city that keeps showing up on America's Worst for Car Theft list year after year. It creates a buyer psychology problem that no amount of fresh paint or updated kitchen can fix. Modesto is a buyer's market right now. If you're looking, the leverage is in your favor. But if you're selling, watching your neighbor cut their price for the third time is a deeply uncomfortable preview of your own near future. Now we move south, way south, into the Inland Empire. In Riverside, the city that spent the last decade selling itself as the smarter, more affordable version of Los Angeles, is finding out what happens when the affordable alternative stops being affordable. Riverside is the largest city in the Inland Empire with a population of about 315,000 people. For years, the pitch was irresistible. Southern California weather, an hour from downtown LA, an hour from the beach, and homes at literally half the price of anything coastal. People lined up, investors lined up harder, and during the pandemic, prices in Riverside went to places nobody had ever imagined. Then 2025 arrived. The Inland Empire posted a negative 2.5% year-over-year price decline by the end of 2025. And inside Riverside specifically, nearly 24% of all listings have had their prices cut. 1 in 4 sellers. These are people who put their homes on a market with real expectations, real numbers, real hope, and are now cutting because the buyers simply are not there at the original price. The overvaluation rate in Riverside sits at 18.5%. And the price-to-income ratio, the ratio of what homes cost versus what local residents actually earn, is sitting at 6.4 times median income. 6.4. The healthy, sustainable range that financial experts have recommended for decades is 3 to 4 times income. Riverside is running at nearly double the healthy ratio. That is not a market that is slightly stretched. That is a market that has been operating in a financially unsustainable zone for years. And here is the core problem with Riverside, the one that explains why this correction is not just a blip. The entire value proposition of the Inland Empire was affordability. That was the product. That was the reason to move there, commute the 90 minutes, deal with the traffic, deal with the distance. You did all of that because the price was worth it. But when prices in Riverside climbed so high that they started approaching the cost of some Los Angeles neighborhoods, the logic evaporated. Why would a family accept a brutal 90-minute commute each way, paying Riverside prices that are closing in on LA prices? The answer is they wouldn't. And they didn't. And the demand that came from that affordability argument dried up. Then came the insurance crisis. Parts of Riverside County fall within designated high wildfire risk zones. And if you have been paying attention to California insurance news over the last 2 years, you know what that means. Premiums have doubled, tripled. Some insurance carriers have exited certain Riverside County zip codes entirely, leaving homeowners scrambling to find coverage at any price. When your insurance bill doubles and your mortgage rate is above 6%, that monthly payment that looked manageable in 2021 becomes suffocating in 2026. Riverside is not collapsing to zero. There are still buyers. There is still demand. But the frenzied, over-asking bidding war market that defined 2020 through 2022? Gone. What replaced it is a market that is repricing itself, slowly, steadily, and uncomfortably for anyone who bought near the top. Sacramento, the state capital, the city that was supposed to be the forever winner of California's real estate story. Population over 500,000 in the city proper. Over 2 million in the greater metro area. Home to state government jobs. The Kings, a food scene that has genuinely surprised people who flew in for a conference and never expected to eat that well. Sacramento had everything going for it. And during the pandemic, it was the destination. The #1 city in the country for Bay Area remote workers packing up and heading somewhere they could actually afford. People were selling San Francisco condos for $1.1 million and buying 4-bedroom Sacramento houses for $490,000 with cash left over, putting the rest in savings and feeling like absolute geniuses. Between 2019 and 2022, Sacramento's median home price jumped from roughly $350,000 to over $500,000. That is a 40% increase in just 3 years. 40% in 3 years. If your home went up 40% in 3 years, you would think the market had figured something out. You would feel secure. You would maybe tell your kids they should buy here too. But what goes up on pandemic-era demand does not necessarily stay up when the pandemic era ends. Sacramento is now one of only 3 California markets that Realtor.com projects will see a price decline of 3.3% or more in 2026. That puts it in the top tier of declining markets, not just in California, but in the entire United States. Companies started calling remote workers back to Bay Area offices. Some of those Sacramento transplants made the commute for a while. Then they stopped. Some moved back closer to the city. Some left California. The steady flood of incoming buyers that turbocharged Sacramento's market turned into a trickle, and the market started to feel the absence immediately. Active listings are up. Days on market have stretched longer. The condo market downtown, which was red hot when work-from-home professionals wanted walkable urban living, is now sitting on price cuts because that same crowd has thinned considerably. Investors who bought Sacramento condos expecting rental income are watching the math not add up the way it did on paper. Now, a 3.3% projected decline might not sound like a siren going off. But let's make it real. On a $500,000 Sacramento home, which is right around the median, that is a loss of over $16,500 in a single year. For a homeowner who bought with a conventional loan at 10% down, who put $50,000 into that house at closing, that is nearly a third of their down payment erased in 12 months. For seniors who are counting on home equity as part of their retirement picture, that is not an abstraction. That is real money disappearing from a plan. Sacramento is still a good city. The food is real. The weather beats the Bay. The culture is growing. But the market overheated on pandemic fantasy, and it is now doing what overheated markets always eventually do. It is coming back down to earth. And coming down from $500,000 is a longer fall than most people planned for. We're the top 5 now. And this is where it stops feeling like a regional story and starts feeling like something has fundamentally shifted in California real estate. San Jose, Silicon Valley's capital city, 3rd largest city in California. Population over 1 million people. This is supposed to be the fortress, the market that nothing can touch, the place where the smartest, highest paid workers in the world live and buy homes and push prices to the moon. Except right now, the moon is having a yard sale. San Jose just recorded a negative 5.5% median home price decline, one of the steepest drops of any major city in the entire United States of America. In a market where the median home price is over $1.4 million, a 5.5% decline means the average San Jose homeowner lost approximately $77,000 in home value in a single year. $77,000 in 1 year. On paper, that is more than the entire annual income of most American households. Just gone. Evaporated. Not from a bad investment, not from a mistake, not from neglect, just from owning a house in a market that overshot what even Silicon Valley salaries could sustain. So what happened? How does the capital of the tech world see home prices fall off a cliff? 2 words: remote work. The entire pricing logic of San Jose was built on physical proximity. You paid $1.4 million for a 3-bedroom house because you had to be there. Apple, Google, Cisco, Adobe, NVIDIA. These companies were right there. You couldn't do the job from Denver. You couldn't do it from Austin. You had to be in the Valley, and that necessity justified paying prices that would make the rest of America's jaw hit the floor. Then, the pandemic proved you could actually do the job from Denver. Engineers moved to Raleigh. Project managers moved to Nashville. Families who had been suffocating under $1.4 million mortgages discovered that a hybrid schedule, 2 or 3 days in the office per week, meant they could live in Sacramento or Reno or even out of state and fly in when needed. The necessity that justified the price disappeared. And when the necessity disappears, the price has to follow eventually. Then the layoffs came. The tech industry shed hundreds of thousands of jobs starting in late 2022 and continuing through 2023 and 2024. The Bay Area felt that harder than anywhere. Hiring tech workers who lose their jobs either leave for cheaper markets or they stop buying entirely. Both outcomes reduce demand. And reduced demand in a market already losing its proximity premium is a compounding problem. Homes that were getting 10 offers over asking in 2021 are now sitting for weeks getting maybe 1 or 2 inquiries. Price reductions are becoming standard practice, not the exception. The $800,000 to $1.2 million range, the bread and butter segment for mid-level tech workers and first-time buyers, is where the pain is most concentrated. Those buyers have either left or they're sitting on their hands waiting for the bottom. And the sellers are left holding listings that the market no longer validates. Now I need you to lean in close for this one, because most of the people watching this have never heard of Ukiah. And yet, what is happening there right now is one of the most specific and revealing stories on this entire list. Ukiah, population approximately 16,000 people. Located in Mendocino County, about 2 hours north of San Francisco, sitting inland from the rugged Mendocino coast in a valley surrounded by vineyards, hills, and the Russian River winding through the middle of town. It is genuinely beautiful. I want to be clear about that. This is not one of those places you look at and wonder why anyone ever moved there. You look at Ukiah and you understand immediately. The pace is slow, the air is clean, or it was. The land is gorgeous. The wine country setting gives it a character that most small towns just do not have. During the pandemic, Ukiah was discovered. Bay Area buyers who wanted space, privacy, land, and a rural escape found it. Prices jump hard. Small homes on large lots that were selling for $300,000 suddenly went for $450,000 to $500,000. People were buying with cash, sight unseen, just trying to get out of the city. It felt like the whole world was moving to Ukiah. It was not. It just felt that way, because now those buyers are not being replaced. And Zillow's forecast data projects Ukiah as one of the steepest price decline markets in all of Northern California heading into 2026. The ground level numbers back that up. Listings are sitting. Days on market are climbing. Price reductions are becoming the norm. Here's what changed. The 2-hour drive to San Francisco without traffic, which felt romantic and adventurous in 2020 when everyone was working from home anyway, now feels like a genuine burden for anyone who needs to live a connected, functional life near services, employers, or family. Add traffic, and that 2 hours becomes 2.5 or more. Ukiah is remote. That was the appeal. Now it is the obstacle. The local job market is centered on agriculture, healthcare, and county government. There is no major employer pulling people in. There is no tech hub, no major university, no industrial base drawing workers to town. The people who moved here for lifestyle during the pandemic are largely still here, but the wave of new buyers needed to sustain the prices is not arriving. Then there is the cannabis economy. For decades, legal or not, Mendocino County's cannabis industry was a quiet but significant economic driver. Growers who operated in the gray market were making real money, spending that money locally and quietly supporting local real estate values. Then California legalized cannabis. And what happened next is something the cannabis advocates did not predict. The legal market was flooded with supply, prices for product collapsed, and small growers who couldn't scale were wiped out. The gray market money that was circulating through Mendocino County's economy largely dried up. That is a real impact on local spending power and local housing demand. Ukiah is the kind of place where charm runs deep and supply of buyers runs thin. And when buyers are thin, prices have to come down to find them. That is exactly the story being written in Ukiah in 2026. We are in the top 3. And if the cities before this one surprised you, Stockton is going to hit differently. Because the numbers here are not soft signals or concerning trends. The numbers here are outright alarming. Stockton takes the number 3 spot because the data is simply undeniable. Realtor.com projects a 4.1% price decline in Stockton for 2026. That is the largest projected decrease of any California metro area and the 3rd largest projected price decline in the entire United States. Let that sink in for a moment. Out of every housing market in this entire country, Stockton ranks 3rd for expected price drops. Not 3rd in California, 3rd in America. But the projection is actually the tame part. On the ground, right now, 25.4% of all homes listed for sale in Stockton have had their prices cut. That is more than 1 in 4 sellers. That is the highest price cut rate in the entire state of California. These are not people doing minor adjustments. These are sellers who priced based on 2022 comparable sales and discovered in 2026 that nobody is paying those prices anymore. So they cut, and they keep cutting. Here is the story of how Stockton got here. Stockton was built on the same promise as Modesto and Sacramento, be the affordable option for Bay Area workers who were priced off the coast. But Stockton was the furthest out and the cheapest of all those options, which meant it attracted the most price-sensitive, most budget-stretched buyers. During the pandemic boom, median home prices in Stockton ran from roughly $300,000 up to over $450,000. That is a 50% jump in just a few years. Investors poured in. Flippers bought houses by the handful, spent 2 weeks slapping on new paint and cabinet handles, and resold them for $40,000 to $60,000 more than they paid. It worked, until it stopped working. And when it stopped fast. Now the investors have pulled back entirely. The flippers are sitting on properties they cannot move. And the regular buyers, the working families who are already stretching their budgets to make Stockton work, are now facing mortgage rates above 6% that turn a stretched budget into a snapped one. The buyer pool has not just shrunk. It has evaporated in certain price ranges. And here is the history that hangs over all of it. In 2012, Stockton became the largest American city ever to file for municipal bankruptcy. They have been working their way back for over a decade. Credit restored. Services rebuilt. Reputation slowly repaired. The waterfront has seen investment. The University of the Pacific provides a stabilizing academic presence. There is genuine recovery progress that deserves acknowledgement. But the stigma lingers the way stigmas do. When a buyer is standing at a fork in the road choosing between Stockton and Sacramento, same distance from the Bay, similar prices now, the bankruptcy history and the crime statistics tip the scale away from Stockton almost every single time. That psychological weight does not show up on a spreadsheet, but it absolutely shows up in the data. A 4.1% decline on a $420,000 Stockton home is over $17,000 in lost value in 1 year. For someone who bought in 2022 with a small down payment, that is not just uncomfortable. That is equity that may no longer exist. Take a breath, because number 2 on this list is the one that genuinely shocks people. This is the one where audiences stop and say, "Wait, are you serious?" Yes, we are serious. San Diego, California. America's finest city. The one with the perfect weather. The sparkling bay. The military bases providing rock-solid employment. The booming biotech corridor. You see San Diego. The zoo. The Padres. The beaches that people in landlocked states dream about their entire lives. San Diego is supposed to be the one California city where real estate cannot lose. It is supposed to be the fortress on the coast. The safe harbor. The one you point to when someone says California real estate is too risky. And yet, according to Realtor.com data, San Diego recorded a 6.7% decline in median home prices, making it the second largest price drop of any major metro area in the entire United States. The only market that fell harder was Austin, Texas. 6.7% on a $750,000 San Diego home is more than $50,000 in lost value. In a single year, $50,000. In most American states, that is a full down payment on a house. In San Diego, it just evaporated from homeowners' net worth in 12 months. How does this happen to the safest market in America? Affordability hit an absolute wall. San Diego prices ran up so dramatically during the pandemic that the market genuinely outpaced what even San Diego's strong, well-paying economy could support. When mortgage rates climbed above 6%, the monthly payment on a median San Diego home pushed past $4,500 a month before taxes and insurance. That monthly number is simply unreachable for a massive segment of would-be buyers, even buyers with solid professional salaries. And when the buyers can't reach the price has to come down to reach the buyers. Then came the insurance crisis. Eastern San Diego County, Northern San Diego County, the areas near the mountain communities and chaparral terrain where the wildfire interface begins. Homeowners in those zones have watched their insurance premiums double and triple in the last 3 years. Some carriers have not just raised rates. They have exited those zip codes entirely, leaving homeowners in a frantic scramble to find coverage at any cost through the state's insurer of last resort. When your total monthly housing expense jumps by $400 a month because your insurance bill exploded, the affordability math that convinced you to buy suddenly looks very different. The condo market in San Diego has been hit particularly hard. Downtown condos, units in National City and Chula Vista. Investors who purchase these properties planning to cover their mortgage with rental income are discovering that between skyrocketing HOA fees, which in some San Diego buildings have climbed above $700 to $900 a month, plus doubled insurance premiums, plus the mortgage, the rental income doesn't come close to covering the bills. The business model broke, and those units are now sitting on the market with price cuts, waiting for a buyer willing to inherit the same broken math. San Diego is never going to be cheap. Let's be absolutely clear about that. This city has structural demand that will not disappear. The military, the biotech, the weather, the lifestyle, the desirability of San Diego is real and it is permanent. But the idea that San Diego real estate only ever goes up, that myth just took a $50,000 hit per home in a single year. And for the senior homeowner who bought during the 2021 and 2022 frenzy planning to sell in retirement and pocket that equity, this decline is not just a statistic. It is a direct reduction in their financial security. All right, here we are, number one, and I want you to prepare yourself, because number one is unlike anything else on this list. Number one is unlike anything else in California. Number one is a place so strange, so specific, and so completely symbolic of what happens when real estate speculation meets pure desert heat, that you almost have to see it to believe it. California City, California. That is the actual name, not a nickname, not a marketing phrase. California City. And yes, the irony of a place called California City representing the biggest home price crash in the entire state is not lost on anyone. California City sits in Kern County, roughly 100 miles north of Los Angeles, out in the Mojave Desert. And right now, according to Redfin data, it has recorded a negative 13.8% year-over-year home price decline. Not 3.3% like Sacramento, not 6.7% like San Diego, not even 5.5% like San Jose. Negative 13.8%. In 1 year. That is not a correction. That is not a cool down. That is a crash. Homes that were selling in about 70 days last year are now sitting on the market for an average of 113 days. That is nearly double the time, just sitting, waiting, collecting dust in the desert wind. The median sale price has dropped to $278,000, and the trajectory has not bottomed out yet. Now, to understand why California City is crashing, you first need to understand what California City actually is. And when I tell you, I need you to sit with it for a moment. In the 1950s, a developer with a grand, almost delusional vision bought up land in the Mojave Desert and began building. His plan was to create a city that would rival Los Angeles. He laid out streets. He put in infrastructure. He installed street signs and fire hydrants. He subdivided plots across an area covering over 200 square miles. That makes California City the third largest city by land area in the entire state of California. Bigger than Bakersfield, bigger than Fresno. But most of those 200 square miles of streets, there's nothing on them. You can drive through California City today and travel for miles on paved roads with proper street signs and working fire hydrants, leading to absolutely nothing. Empty desert lots stretching to the horizon in every direction. The developer's vision never came close to materializing. The city that was going to be the next Los Angeles has a current population of approximately 14,000 people spread across that enormous footprint. 14,000 people, 200 square miles. You do that math and you understand the silence. During the pandemic, speculators and remote workers discovered California City. Prices were almost comically low compared to the rest of California. Investors bought lots hoping the growth wave would finally arrive. Some remote workers bought small homes for what felt like nothing. Prices jumped. It seemed, briefly, like the old developer's dream might actually have a pulse. It did not. The growth wave did not come. The remote workers who moved there discovered that the nearest city with a full grocery selection, a hospital, rail dining, and actual services is Lancaster, about 45 minutes south. California City itself has one grocery store, a handful of gas stations, the infrastructure of a small, isolated desert outpost. The economy runs partly on workers from Edwards Air Force Base and a nearby state prison. Outside of that, employment options are thin. There is no tech hub, no medical center, no university, no growth engine that would justify a sustained demand for housing. And the climate? Summer temperatures in the Mojave routinely hit 110 degrees Fahrenheit. The desert wind blows hard and constant. The landscape is starkly beautiful in the way deserts can be, but it is relentless. Now, the speculators who bet on California City are trying to sell into a market with almost no buyers. And a 13.8% drop in 1 year on what were already modest prices means those sellers are absorbing losses that in some cases represent the majority of their investment. California City was always going to be exactly what it is. An enormous grid of empty desert streets with a name that promised something it could never deliver. For the people who bought here in 2021 and 2022, believing the old developer's dream was finally coming true, the desert answered them the most direct way it knows how. With silence and falling prices.